crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis Wright.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. A really interesting topic of conversation. We've got a fantastic panel of guests to lead us through the subject matter. But before we get going, a couple of ground rules of kind of how we do things here at the attorneys. First of all, we love when you're a part of the conversation. For you to be a part, that information is at the bottom of your screen. You can call, text, email, whatever works best for you. And something that Hollis Wright does that is really cool and unique to the firm is they make their attorneys, they are available every Sunday night while we are on the air. That's a live, off-air, confidential conversation. And if you'd like to take advantage of that, please do so. Again, as long as we're on the air, they are standing by. So if you get a question, a great opportunity for some free legal advice. John Spade with the firm of Hollis Wright leading our conversation. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. What are we diving into tonight?
So tonight we are diving into something that has some intersect with what we do at Hollis Wright, but not something that we handle, internally at our firm, and that is the general area of family law. But really tonight I think we're going to focus a little bit more on child custody, visitation. Those are kind of the two kind of topics that we're going to be delving into, and we are very fortunate this evening to have Miss Erica Kemmer with us. Erica, thank you so much for taking time to be with us and being the expert in this area and really helping us kind of understand and from a 30,000 foot view, getting a look and giving the viewers a look at what happens when a marriage or something or a relationship doesn't end well and they have to separate. So thank you so much for coming on this evening. I appreciate having you. And please tell the viewers just a little bit about you and kind of what brought you here today.
Absolutely, and thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have been in mostly private practice since 2007. Spent a brief stint in the district attorney's office and a brief stint working for a nonprofit, but primarily private practice. I'm currently located in Moundville, just south of Tuscaloosa, and I have several staff there with me now. We've been fortunate enough to grow there. Was previously in Bibb County. I do primarily criminal law, family law, including custody, divorce, child support, visitation, all the things that we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And I do a good bit of juvenile work as well, working with children.
Well, let's kind of talk about just the visitation and child support aspect of what you do and kind of take us through generally what are some of the laws and code sections that apply to that area. Okay.
Well, as you know, Alabama has a code that for pretty much anything now. We have if there's something out there, we pretty much have a law for it. There's probate code, criminal code. There's also a marital and family relations code. Alabama has worked very diligently to keep up with the federal law changes in that aspect. Also, Alabama and the other 50 states and Washington, D.C., the other 49 states and Washington, D.C. have now adopted what's called the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Act. And the benefit to that is it's basically like full faith and credit. So if you have a custody order from Texas and then you move to Alabama, your order in Texas is going to be good and valid and enforceable now in Alabama. You don't have to come, there are certain steps to it, but you don't have to worry about an Alabama court saying, no, that's not what we're going to do anymore. We're going to set all of this aside because now the kids are here. They're going to honor that Texas order for the most part. But primarily a court, all of the compilations of the code, everything boils down to what's going to be in the best interest of the child. And that's a court's primary focus in any custody issues.
And I've heard that term a lot, just covering this going all the way back to law school, and that's just a kind of a term of art, I guess, in doing family law, best interest of the child.
Yes.
Can you kind of explain to us what that means and what maybe some factors that the court will take into consideration when determining what is in the best interest of the child?
Absolutely. The best interest of the child is a standard, and again, it is a term of art. It came from a case as so many of our laws do. As you know, our legislature doesn't put everything in a code. They just let the courts interpret
try to,
that.
but...
Right. They let the courts interpret it, and then the court comes up with a decision, and that's kind of what they use moving forward. Best interest of the child is just the term that we use to say, look at basically the holistic view, a child's mental health, physical health, emotional well-being, stability, and each parent's ability to provide for those things. The tendency of a court now, the trend has become to award some form of joint custody to parents. One thing I do want to note, though, is a lot of people get confused. Joint custody does not always mean equal custody. It does not mean 50-50. It just means that the parents are sharing. There's not one parent as the sole custodian in most cases. There are some rare instances that is necessary, but for the most part, courts do their very best to try to shape some form of a joint custody arrangement. And that's going to deal with physical custody as well as legal custody. And those are a couple things people kind of ask us sometimes. Well, what does that mean? They're pretty self-explanatory. Physical custody is exactly what it sounds like, where the child physically lives.
Okay.
And that's the parent who is going to have the child with him or her the majority of the time, and the other parent has a custody or visitation schedule that they'll have the child. Then legal custody, again, is fairly self-explanatory. It's the legal right to have access and input into religion, healthcare, education, extracurriculars. So one parent can't say, nope, you don't get to see report cards, you don't get to come to soccer games. We've always been raised in this religion, and now you want to take the child and become a completely different religion. Well, you can't do that. Courts find that that's contrary to what is best for the child. A child is supposed to be brought up in a healthy, well-rounded, maintain as much of the routine and welfare for that child as what that child has been accustomed to.
How often, or in your experience, is it in terms of sharing the physical custody of the child, for that to be evenly split? Or is it normally, like I think what I understand is mostly it's with one person, they have weekend visitation. How common is it to actually split that 50-50?
Well, it's becoming more common a lot, especially right now with so many people being able to virtually work or to telework. A lot of the things a court will look at is the geographic proximity of children. And I'll just give you an example. I had a case where mom was a nurse and dad was a firefighter. Mom worked days, dad was on call nights. Literally, they lived 2 streets from each other.
Right.
So they would just combine their work schedules and swap the child.
Yeah.
If they live in the same town, it's pretty easy. You do have some concerns, especially somewhere big like Birmingham or Jefferson County, where you have so many different school zones. It may be that dad or mom could have the child, but he or she, in order to do a week on, week off, or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, they have to be willing to make the commute to drop the child. You know, you got to have one school zone.
Right,
Obviously, you're not going to bounce the child
from
from one place to another.
Right.
Week on, week off is not as common as maybe some people would like it to be, but there's also a consideration there for stability of the kid. You don't want a child basically living out of a suitcase either.
No.
So
the best interest of the kid, that's what they're going for.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Let us take our first break of the evening. We'll step aside right here. We can pick up right here when we get back, but we got to get to a break real quick as we do so. I want to remind you, wherever you are on social media, Hollis Wright is there as well. Does a really good job when it comes to posting informational, educational things on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So wherever you are, Hollis Wright is there as well. Check them out and look them up there if you're on social media. Stay tuned. We are coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with The Attorneys.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. Appreciate you being with us tonight. Before we get back to the conversation, just a reminder, the attorneys from Hollis Wright are standing by during the program tonight, so you got about 20 minutes to take advantage of that opportunity. John?
Yeah, so before we left for the break, we were kind of talking about the best interests of the child and then kind of using that as a factor to determine who has custody,
Right.
Physical custody, legal custody. Once the court has determined what the custody arrangement is going to be, how does the court go about and what kind of input is added to determine visitation rights? For instance, say mom has, the child, Monday through Friday, dad has weekends. How are these visitation schedules set up? And is there any factors that the court takes into consideration?
Sure, absolutely. Let me point out one thing I know a lot of judges will do, and it's very common and encouraged, is they will encourage the parents to come up with a visitation schedule, and then the court will often just incorporate that into their order.
So they will take a cue from the parents, and parents can amicably come together
Yes.
and come with the, okay, that's
Yes,
good to know.
and that's actually better, and especially even we as family law attorneys, we encourage our clients, because if it's something they come up with based on, well, my family does Thanksgiving dinner, but we do lunch, I do Easter, but we're not really religious, different things like that. If it's something that they come up with, number one, they're going to be a lot happier with it than a judge
true.
just telling them, look, this is what you've got to do. Mm-hmm. And number two, it's going to save the court system and the attorneys and the parents a lot of headache, because you're a lot more likely to follow something if you had input and it's what you want to do, versus lawyers or a mediator or a judge saying, well, you get standard visitation, this is the schedule we follow in our county, and you're stuck with it. So I will say that's
good that they're able to take some input from the parents. What happens in a visitation situation, and I guess a custody as well, if one of the parents wants to relocate or move somewhere? How is that typically handled?
Okay, yeah. There is what's called the Relocation Act in Alabama. It's got a really long name, but we call it the Relocation Act. And what that does is the parent, or even primary custodian or the non-custodial parent, as we refer to them, if they want to relocate, if it's outside of the state or if it's more than 60 miles from where the child lives, there's a notice that they have to give, and it's a list of like 14 or 15 different factors. The judge is going to provide that in every custody decision. That's a supplemental order that's given to all the parties. You have to give that notice. Once you send that notice by certified mail, then the other party has 45 days to either agree or object. Some of the things that you have to include are the new school, the new address, and particularly if it's a distance, then what's your proposal for how to address visitation at that point? For example, if you're going to move to Huntsville and the other people live in Montgomery, then that's a lot of a drive. And a lot of times that will come to, well, I'm the one that moved, so I'll just make sure I transport the child at this point. So it still alleviates the burden from the parent who didn't move, but continues to promote that relationship between the child and the non-relocating parents.
And I'm sure we've seen, at least I know how I have in my practice, and I'm sure the same rings true for you with this introduction of virtual everything in Zoom. That probably helps a little bit as far as the visitation, but obviously, as we know, staring at a computer screen isn't quite the same thing as hugging one of your loved ones or taking them to a baseball game or out for ice cream or something like that. So that kind of can help bridge the gap a little bit, but it's not a permanent fix when you're talking about 3 or 4 hour drive when y'all were maybe 2 or 3 streets from each other before.
Absolutely. It has been very helpful though to have either Zoom or even FaceTime visits, even with iPhones, iPads, technology, with children who are old enough to know how to use that. It's actually allowed us some more opportunities. Say the child gets sick and can't come for one visitation. It makes it a lot easier to do makeup visitations when you have that virtual capability. And I know even a lot of schools now, if a child does move somewhere that's farther, or if a parent has to work, a lot of schools are live streaming, kindergarten graduations, things like that. So you're able to participate more. And we are seeing parents who are able to have more communication and more active role in their children's lives than what they were. And if there's any one good thing that's come out of COVID and quarantine and the ability to adapt, that certainly started pushing those options out there and making more of a relationship with the child.
I'm curious, how common is it for those original divorce orders to be updated? Because, I would assume often whenever there's a divorce, you got 2 single people and kids are certain ages, but as they grow, that there may, somebody else may come into the picture now.
Absolutely.
Is it common for those orders to be updated?
Yes, actually, it is. For a parent to modify an order, there's language in there that says modifications have to be done through whatever court did it, or wherever the children live for 3 years. But there's language that addresses that. Obviously, parents can do whatever parents agree to.
Right.
And you don't have to go back to court if mom and dad want to do week on, week off because now dad has moved closer and that works better. They can do anything they agree to for as long as they agree.
Right.
That becomes the problem.
What are common modifications that you've seen?
A lot of times we'll modify holiday schedules. Say, for example, if one parent does move, or takes a different job and a work schedule changes, it may be that where they used to have, say, maybe a 60-40 custody arrangement, and that's not as feasible, we'll modify it where one parent gets more time in the summer, gets the majority of the holiday breaks. This parent's going to get spring break every year now instead of every other year. So there are a lot of flexibility that comes with that, and courts for the most part are not going to really buck with that. If the parents agree to it, they're pretty much going to just accept it. But that modification, again, in order to be enforceable for that time that you do what you want to, that you agree to for as long as you agree, but once you don't agree, you really need something in writing. So it would be encouraged to seek out legal counsel, whether an attorney, to get something done in writing and filed with the court as that fallback or backup plan in case you ever change your mind or you no longer agree.
All right, time for us to step aside. Our final break of the evening. A lot of ground to cover, so time is flying, but we got more of the attorneys coming right up. Stay with us.
I'm attorney John Spade with the Hollis Wright Law Firm. If you have ever had a personal injury claim, the attorney handling your case has likely told you that a portion of your settlement would have to be used to pay back your health insurance company for the medical bills that they paid relating to your injuries. This is called subrogation. In this week's Legal 411, we are answering the question, what is subrogation and how does it affect your personal injury claim? When you purchase health insurance, you sign a contract with the health insurance company which provides that in exchange for you paying a monthly premium, the insurance company will pay your medical bills when you're injured. Now, that contract has a paragraph that gives your health insurance company the right to seek repayment for the medical bills they paid if you in turn use those medical bills as a basis to recover from a third party that caused your injury. The idea is that your health insurance company would not have had to pay your medical bills if it weren't for the wrongdoing of the third party. Now, health insurance companies routinely put attorneys on notice of their subrogation claims by outlining exactly which medical payments the health insurance company is claiming a subrogation claim for and for what amounts. Throughout the handling of your case, your attorney should be aware of the amount of subrogation your health insurance company is claiming and whether all the claimed subrogation is related to your underlying personal injury case. That way, if your case resolves, your attorney can then negotiate a reduction of the health insurance company's subrogation claim. Subrogation is one of the many moving parts that can affect your personal injury settlement and what you stand to recover. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and our promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13.
Welcome back. Just a few minutes remaining in this show. Time has flown by, but if you want to take advantage of the opportunity to speak with those attorneys from Hollis Wright who are standing by, you've got about 6 minutes to do so. John?
Yeah, so right before the break, Erica, we were talking about modifications, and everything's great as long as the parents are agreeing. But you know, what happens when the parents stop agreeing or stop allowing visitation or stop paying, custody payments? How is the interplay? For instance, if you're not paying child support, can I stop the visitation on my own until you start paying, what is owed? Take us through kind of the interplay of that.
Right, that's actually a great question that's very common. A lot of people believe, well, if this parent's not paying child support, then I don't have to let my child go for visitation. And that's absolutely untrue. That can actually put you in a position to be held in contempt for violating a court's order. In the same, well, she's not letting me see my child, so I'm not going to pay her child support anymore. Well, the child support doesn't go to the parent. The child support is supposed to go to the child.
Right.
And so that's the right of the child to be supported. Visitation is a privilege, child support's a right. It's a privilege of the parent, child support's the right of the child. So you absolutely can't stop either one. You can't withhold child support because you're not getting visitation, and you can't withhold visitation because you're not getting child support. Both of those can put you in contempt. I have seen, if it gets bad enough, judges put parents in jail for contempt on child support, actually, until you're able to come up with an amount to purge yourself of being in contempt. And in some extreme cases, if there's a parent who continues to withhold visitation and to refuse to promote that positive relationship between the child and the other parent, that potentially can be grounds to reverse custody and award custody to the other parent. It's rare that it ever gets to that point, but it can happen. And I think the viewers should know that those are, while they may be somewhat extreme instances, those are certainly things that can happen. You can end up in jail or losing custody for failure to comply.
There is no tit for tat there. At the end of the day, I think it kind of went back to what we started the whole show off of, and that it's all about the best interest of the child.
Absolutely.
And the money is going to be used for the child. The visitation is supposed to be as equal a proportion as possible, so that the child's getting, the full upbringing from both parents. And at the end of the day, that's what the focus should be on.
That's absolutely right. And the failure of one parent to promote that relationship with the other parent, or to promote a positive relationship with the child, is definitely going to weigh heavily if parents or parties have to end up back in court.
Do you advise your clients if there's a problem like that, rather than try to handle that on their own by withholding the child? Is that when they come back to you and say, hey, they're not doing what we agreed to, that's the time to get back in touch with you?
Absolutely. It's definitely the time to contact an attorney, even if it's only one instance right then, and it may not be severe enough to warrant the time and money and expense that'll go back to court. At least at that point, you have it documented. A lot of times, if I have clients who have those problems with visitation, particularly, I advise them to get a calendar and start documenting and marking those dates, and then provide that calendar to my office. And then when we have to go, if we have to go back to court, unfortunately, we have that, and you can often submit that calendar and those dates to the court.
Reducing everything to writing is so important.
Absolutely.
All the way throughout, it sounds like. One thing, just real quick, what happens what are some tips, I guess, some quick tips that you give to a parent if the child is not wanting to go to a visitation?
That's so heartbreaking when that happens, and it's so easy as a parent to get upset if you're like, why doesn't my kid want to come see me? One of the main things I would say is try to talk to the child, especially if it's a younger child. It could be as simple as, hey, you know what, my best friend's having a skate party that day, and I really just want to go to their birthday party.
Right.
You know, I want to go skating and swimming instead of coming to your house and, you know, sitting. It could be something that simple. So do your best, don't overreact. Maintain that positive communication flow with the child, and then talk with the child, find out what's going on. You know, what can we do? Are there things, maybe something's changed at your house that you don't even know about.
Right.
But to continue communication between the child and between their other parent so that you work together to promote that healthy relationship.
Great advice. Our time has flown by. We about a minute and a half remaining, but I just want to get a final thought from the both of you. And if you would, you go first, just a final thought for our viewers.
Absolutely. It would be, you know, children are precious and they're a gift that not everybody gets to have. So even though divorces or broken relationships can be very hard, co-parenting's not easy, but it's necessary.
Yeah, that's good. John?
Yeah, and I think kind of the theme throughout everything is keeping the focus on the child or the children, and keeping in mind the best interests of the child, and whether that be through the visitation process, the custody process, child support process, keeping the focus on the child is always should be the number one goal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Really helpful stuff. You know, one of the things that's interesting about what you guys do, you guys really are counselors, you know, and in any of these instances, I mean, just having somebody just to kind of bounce some ideas off of and keeping you guys in the loop, a valuable role. A lot of times I think when folks think of attorneys, you think of litigation, but you know, having somebody that, especially with your experience in this, can really help avoid the pitfalls. So really helpful advice, appreciate it. And as we wrap things up here, just want to remind you, so maybe the attorneys aren't available offline anymore, but you can certainly continue to get in touch with Hollis Wright. They would love to help you in any way they can, so be sure and get in touch with them. All right, folks, thanks so much. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.